Looks like we're live, Jenny.
It is. I think we are live. So, welcome everyone to the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, live in the On Purpose Woman Global Community Facebook group. I'm Jenny Robertson, one of the hosts of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, and I'm also the founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and the founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. I'm here today with Carol Burbank, the founder of Story Weaving Coaching and Consulting, and we'll be talking about waking up your creativity. Welcome, Carol. Glad you're here with me today.
Thanks.
And I've known Carol for a number of years, but for those of you who don't know her, let me tell you a little bit about Carol. She started Story Weaving Coaching and Consulting in 1999, and in 2020, that's not right, is it? 2019, right?
2019, yeah.
Yes, opened the Story Weaving Retreat Center, a space for personal and group retreats, just 15 minutes from the National Harbor in Washington, D.C. Story weaving strategies expand the core stories we're living with, depth explorations of archetypes, habits, and opportunities for choice. As a writing coach, editor, teacher, researcher, and writer, she offers in-person and remote mentoring for writers at every stage of manuscript development. She also works with people facing challenging transitions and creative entrepreneurs to build creative solutions and energize healthy change. She's a regular columnist for Science of Mind magazine and currently teaches at Pacifica Graduate Institute and with the Pipeline Teacher Training Program in Delaware. Carol, you are really busy, aren't you?
I sure am, and I'm blessed to be.
Yes, me too. And I think busy people attract busy people. So I guess the place I want to start is let's get this sort of thing out of the way, the sort of elephant in the room for me at least. For the first half of my life, I was often heard saying, I don't have a creative bone in my body, because I had this idea that creativity had to be either not just doing it, but recognized for it. A writer, a dancer, a performing artist of some sort, a visual artist of some sort. You had to have some kind of talent, and I didn't have any talent. And I remember saying that one day to a friend, because I was admiring something she had done. And I said, I don't have a creative bone in my body. And she goes, well, who created that workshop you presented last week? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, damn, I'm really creative at some things. And so is that a common thing that especially women come up against? What have you heard and what do you think about that whole idea?
Well, I think in general in our culture, it's a really common thing for everyone to think that creativity it's owned by famous artists and famous actors and famous painters and famous writers and other people who do things that can be held up and said, here, look, I made this. And we think that because we're not making something that we can show, or we're not famous, or we're not making a lot of money at doing something, that we're not as creative as those people. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if there's this myth of creativity that it's owned by a very, very small proportion of the world. And I think that it's especially true of women, because women's creativity is spread out among so many demands and so many ways of being that we spread ourselves so thin that we don't often give ourselves the time to do the fun stuff that creativity is associated with, like writing or painting or making something. And so we think when we do a workshop, we're just doing a workshop. We're not doing something creative. And so I think you're right. I think a lot of women, we underestimate ourselves.
Yeah. And imagine the difference if we saw baking bread as creative, or organizing your home, even cleaning. To me, cleaning can be really creative.
Well, it can be, but
it can be.
It can be, but it also can be very uncreative.
It can.
If you always do something the same way, or you do something with kind of dread, so you're mopping the floor and you're not doing it in a new way, or you're not. I don't actually think mopping the floor is creative. I'm going to challenge you on that.
I don't know. I haven't tried that yet. Don does all the floor mopping here, so I don't have.
Well, lucky you.
To do that.
No, I don't. I think almost anything can be creative. I think the general definition of creativity is energized by pushing the boundaries of the way we do something. So
Okay.
something is usually creative when it's interesting or surprising or new. And so it may not be a creative act for me to clean the retreat center, but it's certainly a creative act for me to use the retreat center and welcome people in and creatively make a beautiful meal and creatively have a workshop or creatively make a space for someone to have a workshop. That's creative, but it's not creative that I keep it clean. It's necessary. Like there's some things that are just necessary. Now, someone out there is thinking, well, I'm very creative when I clean. I try all these different cleaning solutions because I want to be creative and I want to support the environment. Well, I would say, yeah, you're probably being very creative because you're not in a routine. You're actually doing something outside the box of the conventional Swiffer mentality of cleaning the floor. But
it's just a strategy, really. The cleaning is a strategy for you to have this experience of creativity with inviting people in and preparing it. And, you know, I feel like after the cleaning's done, that's when I can go around and kind of creatively move things and, you know.
Oh, yeah. You know, anything can really be creative.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think I associate with creative activities, like let's say baking or cooking, that's definitely creative. Literally, it's creating something, but energetically, it's playful, it's joyful, it's making something that matters to someone else, it's sharing something with someone. So as an inveterate bread baker, I actually love making different kinds of braids for my bread. Or I went through a time when I make what I called head bread. And I took on the challenge of, could I make a bread in the shape of the Medusa or Ronald Reagan, or I don't know, I made, it was very fun. And it didn't, you know, the bread always looked like a lumpy head. It didn't always look like anybody, but it was fun. That was creative and it was delicious.
That's so fun. And it actually brings me to another question, which is, it sounds like you weren't attached to the outcome of what it would look like. You still enjoyed the process and you still love the bread, even if it looked like a lumpy head.
That's right. That's right.
And so that's where we get hung up a lot, isn't it? We have an expectation of perfection.
Well, and this brings you to, I don't have a creative bone in my body. It's like, if we think about creativity as a process, a way of going about things, then doesn't that liberate us from having to be the creative person, the thing, whatever we think that person is going to be? Creativity is about the process that we approach things in. And yes, I didn't care if my head bread looked fabulously like the people I was modeling it after. And but it was really fun to do, and it made the bread process really good. Now you can also be really creative as a cook with recipes, or be creative with the way you present something, or it's a process. It's the how, it's not the what.
Okay, great. I love that. Thank you. I think that will help a lot of people just reframe that and to start having more fun with what may have seemed like a mundane thing. Oh, I've got to cook a dinner for the family. But ooh, what can I do to make it, to like jazz it up a little bit and make my experience different? Because isn't it just about the experience that we want to have?
Yes, and in fact, I'm part of an artist group in the town of Akakik. And one of the presentations this week was a Japanese woman who showed us about 400, showed us like a lot of ways that people sculpt daikon radish, grated daikon radish, which is a famous side dish, into all sorts of different creatures. Cats were very popular, but dogs and foxes and the face and masks, kabuki masks, and all sorts of things that were made from food, and it was all edible.
Wow.
And it was so beautiful and it looked so delicious. My favorite was a cat that was curled around a fish.
Wow.
So, you know, but I want to say, I'm not arguing that you have to do something extreme like make a daikon radish kitten to be creative in your cooking.
Good.
I'm saying that our creativity, my creativity, your creativity, anybody's creativity can be expressed in so many different ways. And we should honor how that's being expressed. We have to accept and grow in our creativity. And then we can play with it. And then it might turn into a project, or it might just be something that keeps us jazzed in the world.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that once we start doing it, then we're more apt, we get more comfortable with not having it be perfect, we get more comfortable and we expand kind of our ideas about what creativity looks like for us?
I think so.
And we're willing to actually try something else.
Yeah.
What do
I
you think are
agree.
the symptoms? I'm sorry, do you say anything else? Okay. What do you think are some of the symptoms of unexpressed creativity?
Well, that's a great question, Jenny. What I see in people in unexpressed creativity is depression.
Mm,
You know, depression really is pushing down your feelings. I mean, it's more than that,
yeah.
of course, but it pushes things down. So if you're pushing down the good things and the feelings you don't want, then the good things can't help you sort through all of it. So people get more depressed, or get the blues if they're not depressed. And the blues can really kind of make you feel stagnant and make you feel stuck. And there's also a thing that happens with people who are repressing their creativity, which is that they think they have to conform to what other people say they should be like, or how they should work, or what they're doing, or what they should feel, or who they should be. And so the more people conform uncreatively to something that comes from the outside, the more likely they're going to be pushing down their own creativity, because they're not going to be using their voice. They're not going to be being authentic. And that kind of cultural repression represses our creativity, because really, think about it. The ultimate creative act for each of us is our own self-invention, our own negotiation with the world, so that we can express and share what it is that our calling is, what our purpose is, what the way we want to be creative might be.
I think I'm going to go back and grab that. I'm going to do a meme from
Oh,
you on that. Our greatest act of creativity is our own self, not expression, invention,
self-invention, our
self-invention.
self-invention.
Oh, wow. And
And
so
this,
many people would not see that as creative. They would just see that as a process they're just trying to get through or work through.
well, you know, there's a difference between surviving and thriving, as all our memes say, right? And surviving is really important. And at a time right now when many people are in crisis and really just trying to figure out how to weather this particular dip in the roller coaster, whatever it might be causing in their lives, survival is really important. And you can creatively survive, and you can creatively thrive. So I think a lot of people are doing both now. And we're also having to reinvent ourselves in the age of COVID, and also in the age of any decade. Like, we're always having to reinvent ourselves. And that is really super creative. So yeah, you know, it is really true that we can do anything with creativity, including reinvent ourselves or self-invent.
So you talk about how we can fully express our creativity, not just in writing, art, or performing, but let's talk about writing, art, and performing. The what do you think gets in the way of people, expressing through that? I mean, we touched on it a little bit. I think perfection of wanting it to be perfect. I think back to this idea of, oh, I've got to actually lose some weight before I can go to the gym, or I've got to clean the house before the house cleaner comes. That whole idea of how we're perceived in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see that with people who really have some talent, already have some talent in the
Oh, I
art?
absolutely do. Because what happens with people is that the inner voice that says, you're not enough, I'm not enough, whatever that voice says, or it's not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
or someone else already thought of it, or it's really a mess, I can't show it to anyone, or it's too vulnerable, I
Mm-hmm.
feel vulnerable, or what if they don't like it? Or, you know, whatever the story is, whatever the not enough, not good enough, it's not perfect yet story is, makes creative artists of all kinds, writers, artists, performing artists, say, nope, I'm not going to share it yet. I'm not ready. Excuse me. And that not readiness, when it's about the urge to have something be perfect, so that they can be perfectly loved and everyone will love it and it'll be responded to exactly the way you want and you can predict everything in the world. That's what perfectionism is, right? It's like, it's going to be perfect and then the results will all be the same. But the heart of creativity, of putting a piece you've written, or a performance, or a piece of art, or anything out in the world, even an idea, is that it's in dialogue with the world. It's a risk that makes the dialogue really lovely. We want to be in conversation with the world, not just in our own head, not just saying, oh, I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to read it. Nope.
Yeah.
And the thing about hiding it, it's okay if you need more time, or it's okay. But the world is waiting for us to be in conversation with it. And what we have to say is unique for each person.
Oh, I so agree with that. Yeah.
And so
And
yeah,
it's kind of selfish not to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way,
in a way, like, because I know, sometimes it feels self-indulgent. I hear women say things, but well, I don't think I should be putting it, because it's all about me. But what if somebody needs to read what's all about you?
Yes. And what if you really need to say something? Like, what if I put out an article in Science of Mind and I don't get any feedback at all? That often happens to me. No one, sometimes I get a call or a letter or an email or something, and someone says, wow, that really hit the mark. But quite often it just published. I don't even know who reads it. I don't even know who thinks about it until someone mentions to me, oh, I read your article. And I'm like, wow, that's great. I don't need someone to respond in a certain way to me to put something out there. I want to talk about leadership. That's why I write that column. I want to share my ideas. And if I can be part of a larger conversation with the world, I might not even be mouth to mouth with someone, Excuse me, I'm sorry. I might actually be heart to heart without actually knowing, that someone is touching my idea and building it on with theirs. And the more we put out there, the more actual conversations we can have, the more courage we can have to raise ideas and conversations, and the more present we feel. And this is the thing. It's women often say, it's all about me. I don't have time. It's selfish. And I think that's all wrapped up in the idea that we need to be selflessly of service. It's about our families, or it's about our work, or it's about the world, and we need to give to the world. But that doesn't mean we need to be invisible. Creativity means being present in the conversation.
Yes. Oh, it's another great quote. Creativity means being present in the conversation. Wow. I knew this was going to be a great conversation you're having here, because you're just opening up all sorts of things for me. Too bad we don't have like I said, we could talk for 6 hours easy, I'm sure. And so other ways then that you say that we can express our creativity, if we don't see ourselves, and I don't see myself as, I'm not an artist in that way. I don't, and I'm not drawn to it. I actually run from crafts. It's like, oh, it just doesn't interest me. I tried for years to be a crafty person. And, my first mother-in-law was not only a medical doctor who went to medical school in the 50s, if you can imagine, and a horsewoman, and she made her own clothes, and she did beautiful art and needlepoint, and so did my grandmother-in-law. And so I decided I was going to, to connect with them, I was going to start doing crafts, and I would buy these needlepoint kits. And they would end up being these total messes, because what I really didn't understand is I have difficulty following directions that are visual. And and I read one time, and I won't go into this very long, but that it was because I was switched from left-handed to right-handed when I was a small child, that sometimes that causes some interesting relationships to parts to whole kind of thing. But I also it felt like a chore. And I remember I had probably 30 unfinished craft projects in a closet in my house. And the most freeing day was when I took them out and put them all in a trash bag and sent them away. It didn't even occur to me to ask anybody if they wanted to finish them. They were such a mess. And I was like, okay, that's not me. But there are other ways, as we mentioned. So you talk about how we can be creative in our relationships. What might that look like?
Well, one of the things I notice in story weaving is that when someone is kind of stuck, they tell the same story the same way. I'm sure you've heard this a lot of times, in yourself even, or in people that you talk with. They say the same thing in the same way. I like to frame it like, sometimes people say, that's the story of my life when the car breaks down or whatever, right? Except there's a million ways to say the same story over and over. And I always know when someone's stuck if they say, well, I'm having a terrible time being a writer because da-da-da. And then the next time we meet, they say, well, I can't write because da-da-da. And it's exactly the same language. This is a key sign that someone is doing a tape loop in their head.
Okay.
They have an old story, an old habit that's stuck there. And the reason I bring that up is, in the turn of the story, is that your story and my story need to be framed differently. So you can't be creative by doing needlepoint because it's not your natural, unique way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, and you kept trying, you would pick up a different kit, like, oh, it's just the kit. I'll take a simpler kit. No, I got bored with this one. Now I'm going to do a bigger kit. Oh no, I made a mess of that bird.
Colors weren't enough in that other kit, and just all kinds of reasons. Yes.
Right. And then you'd put it away, and then you'd have a conversation with them, and they'd say, oh, honey, how's that going? And you say, well, I just picked up another kit. And then you go buy another kit. You're trying the same thing over and over. And the stories in our heads and the things that we do, the ideas that we have about our creativity, they're very well rehearsed, and sometimes they've been driven into our heads by other people. Mm-hmm. So what I believe is that we need to look at the natural things we like to do that are creative. So here's a good example. I'll tell a story on me. A lot of my best friends love to make collages to help figure out what it is that they're thinking about. And then they looked at the juxtapositions of the pictures and they go, wow, see, I learned so much. So I spend a lot of time making collages, and sometimes I do it and it works, and sometimes I do it and I look at them and I go, well, there's a picture of a dog, a fish, a castle, this or that, a car, a road. But if I give myself a writing prompt, a random writing prompt, or I give myself a game to play, I can figure out the same question that others can figure out with a collage, which is a very creative way of thinking. And I can figure it out in my own way. So this is the thing that your story made me think of, is that we each have our own way of learning, of doing, and of being. So we all have to evolve a process for creativity where we honor our creativity, and then others around us will say, wow, that's really creative. Mm-hmm. Nobody looks at my collages, and I mean, they do because they're polite, but nobody looks at my collages and says, oh, that is so eloquent. But I look at collage makers and collages and I go, mm-hmm. God, that's beautiful. And they look at my photographs of moonflowers, which are helping me think about what does it mean to be alive in the world. And they say, oh, that's beautiful, because the creativity shines through, because it's my unique way. So yeah. Their beautiful embroidery is your hell.
Very clearly put. Absolutely. And I'm so glad I was like I was 30 when I discovered that, and I didn't have to be that person anymore that I thought I was trying to be, because the burden of that, I would look at that closet and I would go, oh, you never finish anything. Look at all the money you spent. Why do you keep, just all that head stuff that does not help me to be creative.
No, I know. And one of the things that helps me be creative, and I've always been a very creative person. Even when I was a kid, I was writing little stories with my best friend in 4th grade, and we made up plays on the playground, and it's just in my nature. But as a grown-up, I can get very serious. I mean, I run a business. I have to do very serious grown-up things. I have to mop the floor. But I give myself creative games. Now, this is a trick that I want everybody to try. Give yourself something playful that will help you kind of step out of your life just a couple steps. So this year, this, Ginny, and I'll show you.
I was going to bring that up if you didn't.
This year, 2020, my New Year's resolution was to play with plastic dinosaurs. Now, this is my favorite. This is the T-Rex. And in the book that my mother and I wrote about staying at home for COVID, it's called The Stay at Home Bears. I actually taught this dinosaur how to wash his hands. He was covered with soap suds and he was adorable. So basically I said, look, I'm going to buy a set of dinosaurs and I'm going to put them all over the house in different scenarios. And every week or so, I'm going to change the scenarios around. And so they're playing hide and seek in my kitchen until I get bored with that. And then they attack my beef jerky jar. Or I'll get bored with that and then they'll climb up on the window. And I'll get bored with that and then they'll march along a certain thing. And it takes no time out of my busy, very serious adult life, but it lightens up my heart. And I was so excited when Mom and I wrote this stay-at-home bears book because I was able to use my wonderful new dinosaur friends to actually pretend they were the teddy bears toys in the book.
Okay.
And so they got to be stars of a book. At the end of 2020, I'll have a bunch of pictures of dinosaurs doing nothing much except abusing me, and a few pictures in a great children's book. And but I didn't set out to do art with it. I didn't set out to make something creative that would impress anyone. I set out to amuse myself and play like a child does, to be creative for the sake of being creative and playful. And I think that's really important when we have our creative projects like needlepoint or embroidery or making a collage or writing a book or making a painting. If we can get into that playful mood and experiment, then we can expand what we're doing.
Oh, and I remember coming to your beautiful retreat center for the first time, and I saw them, and I don't know if I asked about them or if you pointed out why they were there, because I remember thinking, I don't think, my first habitual thought, I don't think Carol has any small children here. And that's the grown up going, why would she have dinosaurs? I don't have dinosaurs, just that goofy stuff and all those rules that we think we're supposed to conform to as serious business people and adult women, And I loved it. Once you told me what it was about, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm grateful for this conversation today because I'd kind of forgotten about it, but I'm going to pay attention to when I have that desire I'm not going to go make myself play because that'll just become another task.
Right.
But to actually go, okay, what would be fun right now? That is especially something that is fun because I have been labeled as kind of a reserved human. I'm not the life of the party person, though I can hold my own, but I'm not that person, And so that was a taught thing in many ways. It's not necessarily my natural personality.
Well, you know what you say, I'm not that person.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm that person and sometimes I'm this person. And
sometimes I think I am that person.
You are that person.
I just said I'm not.
I've seen you be that person. But I'm
not that person the way other people look like that person. That's probably what I'm saying. Isn't that true?
Yes. And I think we think of creative people as flamboyant, as expressive, as colorful. And actually, if you looked at people like Virginia Woolf or Georgia O'Keeffe, or I bet you can all think of somebody that they were quiet, dedicated, creative people. And you can be any kind of personality and be creative. But this is the thing. If everybody sat down and said, what is my stereotype of what is a creative person and what is a creative project, you'd probably find out that a lot of stuff you do is creative, but you've decided that it's not because the story you've attached to creativity isn't real. So someone who's writing a nonfiction book might say, well, I'm not creative, but I am working on a memoir. It's like, well, yeah, okay. You're creative, you're making something. It's like, if we idealize any concept, if we idealize the idea of creativity as that person, then what we do is we end up doing what the world has done to too many women, which is shutting us down before we can express who we really are.
Mm-hmm. And buying into that idea that we are not taking seriously anyway. So how can we, if I show that more playful, flamboyant side of me or whatever, having grown up in the corporate culture, and sometimes been the only woman in the room, wow, I had to conform to not just what I wore, but what came out of my mouth and my emotional state.
You had to conform to
that if I'm playful, you're not going to take me seriously.
Well, they won't, right? Because in some contexts, you have to be masculine, you have to be serious, you can't make a joke, you can't react emotionally, you have to laugh at their jokes, which aren't necessarily funny, but you can't make a joke that your women friends would laugh at because they would go, what? So in a lot of settings, it makes sense for us to express different aspects of ourselves.
Right.
I mean, in other aspects of my work, I talk about all of us, especially women, as shapeshifters. Like, we have to perform different parts of ourselves, but creativity doesn't have to be in our performance of self. creativity can be in the way we work. It can be in the way we explore. And it can be in the nonfiction or the memoir or the haiku that you like to write, or the picture that you like to make, or the doodles that you make to help you figure out something. Because creativity really means thinking in a different way from the main lockstep of the world, thinking in the way that you work.
Another great one, Carol. My goodness. Okay. So you talked about one of the things we said we were going to talk about in this interview was about feeling energized about the possibilities around creativity. So how do we get there to start to actually get excited about it, especially if we've lived in that world of I'm not creative for a long time?
That's a great question. And of course, it depends on each person.
Sure.
But I actually want to address what's happening now. The fact that many of us, not everyone, are still in relative social isolation, and that some of us are in relative social isolation with other people. So things get very close quarters, and dominant personalities take over and helper personalities take over. So our roles get tighter and more uncomfortable. One of the things that I want to say about that is that right now is a perfect time for us to go within and step back and take a little personal time away from our 3D COVID buddies who may be hemming us in or keeping us busily occupied and distracted in good ways, and to go within and say, okay, what's bubbling up inside of me? What's bubbling up inside of me? What am I hoping for? What am I thinking about? What am I longing for? What am I hungry for? Those are questions that bring us to creativity, especially those of us who don't think we're creative because we might not be extroverts, or we might not be a famous X, Y, or Z. Now is the time for us to say, okay, the world is a complicated place. I need to negotiate creatively with the world. I have to be creative in this world today. I have to be creative about my child who's going to school virtually. I have to be creative about my garden because it's the only space that I have that I can really control. And controlling it doesn't mean making it perfect. It means making it beautiful. I have to be creative about how I'm going to dress myself and be in the freedom and the constraints I have now. But where do I want to begin? And I hope this makes sense to people, that there's a place we go inside of us that's kind of in the center of our being, where we can hear the voice of our soul, or we can hear the voice of our creativity. And just ask yourself, what is it that's bubbling up inside me right now? And that's the question that we need to ask, and then really honor it. It doesn't mean express it right away. It means say, oh, what's one way I can express that right now comfortably? And then as that step into the world with that bubbling up hope happens, then the next step will come, and the next step, and the next step. And eventually there'll be a chapbook of poems, or there'll be some cool pictures of dinosaurs, or there'll be a beautiful letter to your son who's living in Australia and you miss them. Or there'll be a scrapbook of things that you value that are beautifully arrayed on the page. Or there'll be, for those for whom needlepoint isn't hell, there'll be this beautiful needlepoint design that you might say, well, I want to adapt this a little bit. I want to shift this a little bit. It's a one step at a time process. So if you're not assuming that creativity is X, Y, or Z, and you're saying, I know creativity is going to be R. Creativity is going to be making some new food. That's what's bubbling up. I want a different taste in my mouth. I'm going to learn a new recipe. That's step one. Step two might be ordering some really cool spices. Step three might be experimenting. Step four might be having your COVID buddies in. Step five might be going online and doing as one of our OPW members has, starting a cooking club in Facebook. And no one can tell me that any of those steps are uncreative.
Yeah. Carol, I love not just what you said, but how you said it, because you made everything sound lovely. Every step, no matter how somebody might judge it as, oh, that's just that. That wasn't a big deal for me. And it made me think about a few weeks ago, we had a lot of work done in our yard, but some other things, weeds started popping up. We've had not a very great yard for a long time. And oh gosh, you have to maintain this stuff, don't you? When somebody comes in and cleans it all up, there's weeds. Oh no, we don't like doing weeds. So I was sitting in my chair quietly. What can I do about that? And I remembered a woman that I met one time many years ago, but I see her on Facebook. She had these twin daughters who were little girls at the time. They're now in their early 20s. And I had seen Facebook posts of them working in their garden. And so I messaged her and said, would either of you or both of your twin daughters like to earn some money taking care of our yard for a bit? And one of them said yes. And she's been here twice. And not only is she pulling up weeds, she's recommending easy plants. And I look at her out there sitting in the dirt. She's bringing such great energy into our space. But that was a creative moment. That was a creative thought that had I just been in the problem of it, oh, we don't like doing that stuff. That's not mine to do. But I'm so proud of myself because I opened up and said, well, how can I, because I was thinking there must be a teenager in the neighborhood who would do that. But she is perfect because she loves it and she's in her joy doing it. And it just reminded me of that, and it works.
And her creativity inspires you. So when you go out to the garden to do the things that you love to do, to plant the easy plants, then you are making beauty. You're making. So there's a beautiful word that is very ancient, and it's the word maker. Maker. And the idea is if someone is a maker, then they make something. They can be an artist or a writer. They can be a gardener. You're making something. They can fabricate something. They can be a carpenter. They can be a maker. Creativity is about committing to making, to becoming a maker. And you make a space through OPW. I make a space in the things I facilitate. I'm a maker there just as I am when I make a poem or I make a photograph. And in my work, in my coaching work, I really want people to own that they are makers and to choose what they're making and honor the fact of making as a process of learning and growing and expanding. Whether it's as silly as a plastic dinosaur washing its hands in sudsy soap, or whether it's as serious as me writing a sonnet, which some people would say, a sonnet? You must be a poet. I can never write a sonnet. I'm not creative like that. Well, you don't have to write a sonnet to be creative. I like doing it because that's my natural voice. And so I love that you invited someone in to do work that they value and you value, so that you can have a making space in your garden that isn't about unpleasant labor.
And there's a solution that I can always have now. And so, when you talk about the spaces that we make and create, I had to also, I guess, own up to a number of years ago that what a creative idea to actually start this organization in the first place. No one was doing it quite like I wanted to do it. But to me, it was an idea, and I didn't give myself credit for ideas that I had or ideas that weren't perfectly executed, I guess. So there's so much unlearning.
There really is. That self-judgment is such a blunt instrument, isn't it?
Yes.
The whole idea that an idea that we're manifesting in the world step by step and learning how to make better and better is not creative. It boggles my mind that people would feel that way. But I have a challenge as a maker, which is that I'll make something like my mom and I did a children's book 3 years ago. And a year later, I'm like, yeah, I'm not being very creative lately. And I forget that being creative is being, it's not the product. So when my mom and I went to visit her recently and we decided to do this children's book, she said, let's do another children's book with my teddy bears. I said, oh yes. And we did. And it was a process that actually woke me up to delight in a new way. And I thought, why is it that I can't just fondly hold a space in myself to say, there's always space for this. There's always space for this. Every day, I can honor what I've done, but I can also say, I have a goal, but I have a desire to just be in the process of creativity. So the goal isn't creative. I really want to say this. A goal is not necessarily creative. How we pursue the goal is creative. And the creativity of an original idea well expressed in the world, like OPW or like Prowley and Growley and the Stay-at-Home Bears, that is the manifestation of the creative process. But the process itself is the engagement of the heart and soul. And if we stop it, if we repress it, if we say, oh, that's not my job, I'm supposed to just make sure my kids are safe, which is certainly an important thing to do. How about, I'm raising children. How can I do it as creatively and engaged and present as possible so that I'm as satisfied as they are?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's so much satisfaction in embracing creativity wherever we can.
I love what you said about waking up to delight. And, healthy 2-year-olds live in delight, don't they?
They do.
Even when they're in tantrum mode, there's always the light right around the corner from that,
Well, even in tantrum, they'll look up at you and go,
that is
true.
true.
Attention? I'm having a really good time.
I love it.
I'm miserable, but I'm having a good time anyway.
Yeah. Carol, I do want to talk about the book you wrote with your mother. You have another book and you have some things maybe coming up, but I want to, what is like a last thought you would want to leave the people watching this about this idea of expressing our creativity?
I think I want to say that awakening the creativity is about awakening the dream of our souls. It's that deep. And we can manifest it in every aspect of our lives. And that's really satisfying. The people I work with and the people I admire, my heroes in the world, listen to the dream of their souls. And they say, how can I be and express and experience and explore that in the world? That's the process of creativity. It's not a goal, it's a way of being. So what I would say to everybody is, get rid of the old myth that you have to be famous or perfect to be creative, and embrace and listen to yourself, to your inner dream. And that inner dream will help guide you towards your calling, relationships that really connect with who you are authentically, with new ideas, with new job opportunities, with new ways of being. We are not, in our writing or our art or our living, we're not separate from the world. That's what bridges the world for us. Yeah. And so waking up creativity wakes up bridges to the world and new ways of being free.
Oh, wow. So much wisdom there, Carol. Thank you. And just to put another, a different slant, not a slant, but an example, I guess, of that, I've gotten really much clearer over the last few months, even. The mission has always been, for many years at least, to connect women around the world to their gifts, their purpose, and each other. But what's really gotten clear is that everything that I do gives women an opportunity to also express themselves, to be seen and heard in a greater way in the world. So when Catherine and I came up with this idea to do these interviews and this talk show, that was a goal to actually implement. But now we're in the creative part of actually doing the interview. And just show up here with no script, with just this conversation that we're going to have is such a beautiful way for me to then express my creativity and for you to express yours back to me. So it doesn't have to look like what we think it looks like. But if it's counter to what our soul is telling us, I don't think we'll get the same degree of joy, delight, excitement, because I think I told you when you got on here that I'd had this crazy morning with no internet and other stuff, but by the time I showed up, it still didn't matter. I was excited about doing this interview. because
Me
I've
too.
loved every interview that I've done. It's been wonderful.
And there's one thing I want to add to
Yes,
what you
please.
just said, which, because I agree with everything, and I want to add the word risk. Because
Mm.
it's a risk to show up and be present. It's a risk, however we do it. And it's important to take that risk. You know, that's where excitement comes in. I mean, excitement and anxiety, two sides of one coin.
Mhm.
So that whole creative conversation that we're having, and the willingness for each of us to actually just be present and share, that means we're being in the process. And that being in the process is how I want to say we choose your steps forward. So you set goals, but how do you want to be in those process, the process that gets you there?
Yeah.
That's going to make the goal either worthwhile and satisfying and joyful, or, yep, I did that. No.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. This is so much great stuff here. So you mentioned the book you and your mom have written.
It's
Say
called
something
The
about
Stay
that.
at Home Bears, and it's in production now. So we'll probably have it out around September 15th, and it's going to be on Amazon. It's going to be sold in ebook form, and it's also going to be print on demand form. So, and it's aimed at up to second or third graders. It's a very simple picture book using my mother's 85-year-old bear. She's 90, and she and I have worked together to do this book. And and Barbara Olwig, who's in On Purpose Women, she's the graphic designer, and so she's finishing up the design, and it'll be out in September, and I'll put it out on this page when it's ready to go.
Right.
It's such a delight. I mean, my mother is a magical woman who doesn't think she has a creative bone in her body, and yet co-authors a children's book
At 90.
at 90.
She didn't just get that at 90 either. She's had it a long time, I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you have a book yourself.
I do. It's called Answer the Call to Adventure, and it's I call it a playbook because it's not a lot of work to do it, but it's a workbook playbook, and it uses archetypes, which are primal stories, collective primal stories, to help you build a system of allies and really identify your calling and what you need to take the first steps to move into your purpose. And that's available on Amazon or directly from me.
Okay. And how could people find out more about you? And I imagine when your children's book is out, you'll have that on your website somewhere as well.
Yes, and I'll put it on Facebook as well.
Okay.
So you can email me at cburbank@storyweaving.com, and my website is storyweaving.com. And you can email me and contact me anytime if you want to just talk with me about writing coaching or creative coaching, or just to say, hello, when's your book coming out?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I'm going to really insist that people watch this interview because you had so many nuggets. I'm going to, again, go back and grab some of those out and share them somewhere. I don't know where exactly I'll do that yet. But I want to thank you for being here, Carol, and just for, we did a 50-minute interview, and I think it could have still been 6 hours and we would have still been going on.
Oh, I don't know.
But, I want to thank everyone else for joining us for the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show live in the On Purpose Woman Global Community Facebook group. For a list of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show topics, you can actually go on onpurposewomanmagazine.com, check out the current issue. However, this is our last interview from that magazine. This is our last interview for July and August. We're working on the September-October issue of On Purpose Woman magazine, which will be published online next Tuesday, the 1st of September. That will have a new list of interviews. And in the meantime, go to our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and type in On Purpose Woman Global Community. You'll see all of the interviews. Carol's interview will be up within the next 24 hours. And if you love this interview or any of the other ones, please share it with your friends. Tell them to go over there, like, subscribe, do all that stuff so that it will get more visibility out there in the world. There are already over 20 inspiring, informative, and fun interviews for you to watch on our YouTube channel. So again, be sure to check out On Purpose Woman Magazine at onpurposewomanmagazine.com. Carol's actually got an article in there, this last issue, and one coming up in the new issue. Lots of other great things that you don't want to miss. But you can also see again when our next interviews are going to be. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all of you for watching. And again, thank you, Carol, for a great interview.
Thanks, Ginny. Thanks, everyone, for joining.